If I could describe the Get My Life tour in one word, it would be vulnerability. Showing up for yourself is so important. Welcome to the Get My Life tour. I'm your host, Lydia T. Blanco. Hey y'all, and welcome to the Get My Life tour. You know, I'm always excited because I have such incredible women who take center stage with me. Like, I can brag, but I'm not. I will let the Get My Life tour speak for itself because it's a podcast, of course. But today, let me tell you something. I have someone extremely special who will be joining me on this stop of the tour all the way in Atlanta. For some reason, I can't get away from Atlanta, and I'm okay with that because there are so many dope Black people in Atlanta, right? And one of them is Audrey Cash, who is the founder and CEO of Level3 Yoga, the only hip-hop yoga studio in Atlanta. And guess what? Twerking happens there as well. Level3 Yoga is one of 5 Black women-owned studios in Atlanta. Yes, one of 5. Yeah. And Audrey has made it a point for her studio to be centered around wellness, mindfulness, and the liberation that comes with twerking. Yes, twerking. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us on the Get My Life tour. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here on the Get My Life tour. You are in Atlanta. You are killing it. And you have so much to share, but in your own words, let our, listeners know, our sisters, our brothers know who Audrey Cash is.
Yes. I am a yoga instructor. I struggle a lot of times with sort of placing myself as a yoga instructor first because I so badly want to be known as this woman who's an entrepreneur and who's like killing it and owning stuff. And like, yes, but lately I've been giving myself permission to stay rooted in the fact that I am a yoga instructor, really stay rooted in very much what I feel that I have been gifted with to share with other people. So yeah, I'm a yoga instructor. I own a yoga studio here in Atlanta, Georgia called Level3 Yoga. Like you said, we are the only hip hop yoga studio in Atlanta. And I always tell people like, yes, I'm sure there are other studios that are playing hip hop music. But we are the only studio where every class you will hear hip hop. We are the only studio that has dedicated classes on our schedule to trap yoga. And we are the only studio that offers twerk yoga as a weekly class. And that's all very intentional because what we are looking to do is fuse hip hop culture, a lot of the rawness, a lot of the real, a lot of that, we just as instinctually begin to move and flow when we hear that sort of music that is so for our culture. And we're trying to pair that with the traditional practice of yoga, because I still truly believe in what yoga, what was brought from India can, provide us and a lot of the benefits of the practice. So that's what we're trying to do.
I love that. I love that you are doing that. I am not as active of a yogi as I need to be per the recommendation of my chiropractor and physical therapist. Yes. But you know what? This is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because there are so many ways that we have to stretch ourselves in our lives, right? And I believe that yoga is one of the ways that we're able to do that, physically as well as spiritually when that is integrated into the practice. Yeah. But, I would love to know, you are a yoga instructor, right? But what are some of the ways that you were stretched in life that led you to yoga?
Ooh, that's so good. I mean, I have sometimes I'm embarrassed for telling people how I came to yoga, because it was through watching Tia and Tamara. They had a show, they had like a reality show back, I started in 2010. So yeah, almost 10 years ago. Or maybe they had the show in 2011, something like that. And I was a huge fan of theirs. And I will never forget, Tia went to like this hot yoga studio. And I was like, wait, Black people do yoga? Like, I didn't even,
Right?
like, I had heard about it. I mean, I was in LA, of course, literally, you know, everyone does yoga in LA, but no Black people I knew actually did it. So I saw that show and I'm always like embarrassed to be like, that's why I went to a yoga class. Because I was like,
Hey,
oh, other Black people do it.
there's nothing wrong with a little exposure, no matter what that looks like.
Hello. But sort of what really hooked me with yoga was the fact that I used to work for E Online. And a lot of my job, as you can imagine, was very fast paced and interacting with people truly all day long, which I love to do. But if you're in that type of field, it can be a lot to literally be on all day long. And so I would go to yoga to shut up for an hour. Like, I'm not even kidding, to literally stop talking and to slow my body down for an hour. And it felt so unnatural for so long because we are taught, you know, not to stop. We are taught that, like, why are you sleeping? Like, it's just like, you know, the hustle never stops. Like, all of these
Right.
things. And I truly was feeding into that. I mean, I was in LA. I was in this like city that, you know, just does not stop. And I was feeding so much into that. And I think the ways in which I was personally being stretched was to learn to slow down. I didn't know anything about that. I'm a Leo. I still very much struggle with slowing down, but I needed to understand sort of that other side of the spectrum. Because if you just keep going, as Black women often do, because we're taking care of everybody and everyone around us, you're not going to be able to sustain that. Like, you will crash eventually. So I just started to really understand sort of this idea of like, how can I learn to stretch even in the rest? Like, learn to be, learn to have to, I don't know, like have to like grow even as I'm learning to take steps back. I've been telling my friend, like, I've been telling her like a solid like 2 weeks, how can we do less?
That's good.
Sounds so like, what do you mean you're going to do less? But like, be very intentional about how can I intentionally do less so that I don't have to work so hard. So I don't have to be like grasping at every single thing. I don't have to say yes to every single thing. It's no, I'm choosing to take the steps back that I need and only say yes to the things that speak to me and that really fulfill me. And it's easy because yoga has like taught me all of that, to like slow down, understand how to be much more intentional and not feel like I'm just kind of like having to do all of the things just because everyone else is telling me that I'm supposed to be doing all of these things.
That is so good. You know, slowing down, taking deep breaths, stretching yourself, being intentional and mindful is so necessary in our everyday lives. And I think so many of us are just on the go, like you said. So I love the idea of doing less. You know, people often say less is more, but I don't think we look at life that way, right? We're like, oh, less is more when it comes to makeup. Like, okay, sis, we see you, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, some of the most brilliant and productive people, you know, they hire their weaknesses, right? But they've gotten to a point where they're able to step back and they let, you know, the business run itself, or they find the support they need. And I love that you offer yoga as support to, you know, so many men and women who come through to your studio, right? But you weren't always the business owner, right? You were Audrey Cash, the instructor, the yogi who found, is it appropriate to call you a yogi? I don't know. Correct me. I just feel like that's so corny.
No,
Give me the proper term. Is that it?
Yes, yogi.
Okay. Okay. So sorry to everyone who I've offended by saying that yogi was corny.
No.
But no, you know, you found yoga through exposure from Tia and Tamara, which is dope. I love them too. Those are most definitely my cousins in my head.
Yes.
But there had to be, you know, a path to becoming
Mhm.
the boss.
Oh my God.
What was that path like, you
Yeah.
know, both personally and
Mhm.
professionally for you?
Of course. Yeah. So I started taking class. I got hooked almost immediately. And I was taking class, I kid you not, like 5 to 6 times a week. And the
Wow.
reason I wouldn't go that seventh day is because I would literally like tell myself, like, girl, like I just have this, when I get into a routine, I feel really good about something. I just keep going. Like I'll just keep doing
Mm,
it. And I had to sort of force myself to not, I don't know, sort of get into that obsession with it. Because that can be very taxing on your body. You know, you can't really do anything like every single day. That can be a lot exercise wise. So I was going a lot, and I was going to this yoga studio in LA that I absolutely love. It's also a heated studio. So again, that's just a lot for your body. But I was going every day, and every time I would go. I mean, I kid you not, I was the only person of color. I remember they had one teacher who I believe he was from India. I feel like I remember him telling us one time he was from India. But other than that, like teachers, staff, I would be the only one. And
mm.
so in order to like I don't know, to be the only one, and I just felt so good about what I was learning. I literally was like, I have to bring this to Black people. Like
Yeah.
there's just no representation at all. And so it started off very much as, I feel like this is my duty. I'm getting so many benefits from this. I have to spread this. So I took teacher training. I didn't necessarily, I mean, I knew I wanted to teach, again, only to get more people to learn about yoga. I didn't really even see it anything past that. I don't even know like that I thought I was going to teach that many classes. So I
Mm.
graduated from my teacher training. This was over 4 years ago. And I started to teach right away. As luck would have it, while I was in Los Angeles, I was laid off from my job, which is still very crazy. They did not do layoffs. Like that was not something that that company ever did. But as you're in teacher training, they often tell you that you're going to release everything that no longer serves you.
Wow.
And yeah, and like I remember praying to get laid off. Now, granted, I had no example of anybody around me that had gotten laid off, but for some reason I was like, if I could get laid off, I could go teach yoga. And it happened, which is like a whole nother conversation of manifesting and
Well,
how
you know what? It's not like we have to skip over that conversation because that is a part of it.
yes.
I believe in the power of manifestation.
Oh my God.
Tell me more about what it was that you were putting out there into the universe and speaking
Ah,
to the Most High about, and
yeah.
how that really shaped your mindset and
Mhm.
prepared you spiritually for what it is that you said you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I will never forget. I asked, I was sort of had like two different teacher trainings in mind, and I asked who ended up being my teacher. I asked her, I was like, well, why should I take, I literally said it like this, well, why should I take this teacher training? And she said, because you're going to release everything that no longer serves you. And I was just like, it like hit me. And I was like, that's what I'm looking for. Like,
Mm.
yes, I had this goal of like, I want to serve Black women, but at the end of the day, I knew that I was chasing something. I knew that in a lot of ways I was very unfulfilled with my job. I knew that I had so much more that I could bring to this world. And yet I'm sitting at a desk watching the Kardashians. Like literally that was my job, to watch the episodes and post them on demand. Like what? And so I just knew I needed more.
Hmm.
Our training was 10 weeks. And throughout that process, there would be moments where I was still working, of course, but there would be moments when I would sort of like take off like an afternoon, and I would go into the studio and we do practice teaching. And I just was like, I got to do this. Like,
Yeah. When
I,
you know, you know.
right. I, I had never felt that I was giving to other people in that way. I just had never experienced that. And that just felt so incredible to feel like I was sharing something that meant so much to me, that had truly changed my life, with other people. And so, yeah, like throughout that time, I kid you not, I was like trying to be like laid off. I still don't know why nobody around me had been laid off. But, and then I was, and I'll never forget, I was on the phone with my mom. I was like walking to the parking lot. I told my mom that I got laid off, and she was like, what? I was like, yes, I got laid off. And I was literally like smiling. And
You
she's like,
know?
what? I was like, I know. I was just so excited. She's like, what is wrong with my child? But it worked out. And so then for there, I like graduated from teacher training and ended up coming back to Atlanta sort of as like a trial to see like, okay, is there any yoga in Atlanta? I hadn't been here. I mean, I had been away for 6 years. So I was like, is there a yoga in Atlanta now? I have no clue. And then truly, like, as luck would have it, my best friend was going to a studio here. And she talked to the manager and was just like, hey, my friend just finished up her teacher training. Are you guys hiring for teachers? She was like, yeah, just tell her to email me. I emailed her. Girl, at the end of January, I graduated in November. I did this like trial month in Atlanta to be like, okay, could I live here? I was like, yes, because also what else am I going to do in my life? I can live here. Like, be at my mama's house. And then in that January, that this particular studio, you had to like go under their training to teach with them. Why was their training in January? Like, it was just too perfect.
Yeah.
They
Divine
had
timing.
truly divine timing. They had maybe like 40 people in that training group. Only, I think 3 of us were hired. Like, it just literally after that, I started teaching with them. Maybe like a month later, maybe not even, maybe a month later, I became a studio assistant with them. Then like 4 or 5 months later, my studio manager moved to another studio. So I got promoted to studio manager. Like, you just couldn't tell me like I wasn't supposed to be here doing this very thing. Just the way that everything unfolded.
Isn't it incredible what happens when you follow your heart and the
Yes.
will of
Yes.
the Most High for your life?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I often struggle with the thought of wanting to give in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or quit when you
Yeah.
know it's time to go. But when I feel like when the Most High says go,
Yeah.
and he puts that prayer on your heart, like, hey, how about you pray for this? It is incredible the way that manifests. And I just love to hear how you did what you were called to do,
Yeah.
and your steps were ordered. I think that's a life lesson that, we hear from time to time, but we aren't bold enough to actually
Mm-hmm.
execute
Yeah.
or take action on. You prayed the prayer,
Mm-hmm.
you put it
Mm-hmm.
out there in the universe,
Mm-hmm.
and you said yes to the opportunities
Mm-hmm.
as they came. What gave you the courage to do so? That's not easy. It sounds so good, but
Yeah.
I would not assume that that's something that came easy.
I mean, I moved all the way back home. I hadn't been home in years. I had been completely on my own, like having my own job, my own car, my own house, like all of this stuff in LA. And I left a boyfriend. Like, yeah, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. But I just it's not easy, but also like when things line up and you almost don't have to do anything to make it happen, that's when you know like you're in the flow of what God is creating for you. And so I don't want to say it's easy, but I feel like there becomes a point where it is easy because all you have to do is your work. Like, I had to do training. It was a 3-day weekend training. And that training was only for, we have different formats in yoga. It's called like power. And then they had another training for a sculpt. After that, they had another training. That was at 3 days. After that, they had another training for hot power fusion. I kid you not, I did 3 trainings in 6 weeks. And so, no, it's not going to be easy, but also there becomes a point where all you are like, okay, I'm just going to do what I have to do. Like, and all I can do is study. All I can do is practice teach. All I can do is all of these things and just allow God to move. Like,
Faith without works, right?
I'm just, don't fight it. Only allow yourself to control exactly what you can control. And then from there, it's going to flow.
You know what, Minister Cash? You have the appropriate last name. So we are going to pass the collection plate at this time because you most definitely are. You are really, really delivering a word right now. Faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
And at times it is hard to wrap your mind around what your work, or what your end of the bargain, looks like
Yeah.
when you're in the thick of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you
Mm-hmm.
saying, trust the process, you saying, just do what you have to do, it really puts things into perspective because, it's easy to make up excuses. It is easy to become complacent,
Mm-hmm.
and just settle for things as they are. But when you believe bigger, when you, operate from, from faith, then
Yeah.
it pushes you differently into your purpose.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I always,
November, January, in
oh,
luck.
yeah. Yeah. I think I started studio assistant in March, and then I became the studio manager, I think like June or July. And like, yeah, it's just, and I always tell people, like, it doesn't have to be, like, prayers don't have to be like you specifically, like, on your knees, hands are clapped, my head is bowed. Like, you are a walking prayer. Like, if you can just, like, understand how you are walking out in your power, that's the prayer right there. You have to
Mm.
keep, like, going and keep trying to manifest things. I truly believe in speaking things into existence. That's like I yeah, I can't. I have a big opportunity that just happened, or it's technically happening in December, and I literally said it out loud to 3 people like back in July, and they're like, "What? This makes no sense." And I said it out loud, like, "I'm going to be." It's a TV show. I was like, "I'm going to be on this TV show," and they're like, "What? Like, why would you be on that show?" I'm going to be on that show in December. Like, so it's just understanding all of this power that you have, but also allowing the flow to happen.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I am so inspired. You just being who you are is going to speak to so many people who are at a point in their life where, like that fork in a road,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
My goodness, you're helping me as well. This is what the Get My Life Tour is all about, right? You showing up the way you are showing up will inspire others to, consider and
Mm-hmm.
think about how it is that they are showing up and how they want to show up. You know, in conversation, I learned that you face some challenges within your industry as
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
a leader, right? While working for someone else.
Yeah.
Take us through those challenges and how
Um,
that really pushed you
mm,
further into your purpose and, pushed you into ownership.
oh yeah, because I definitely did not think I would be here, but there comes a point where I want to say 2 things. First, there comes a point where you start to outgrow where you are. I the studio, it's a chain of studios. So the studio that I was at was, literally amazing. I love the community. I loved all of that. But there got to a point where my class would have, like, by far the most students, like the highest attended class. It got to a point where I am pretty much like seen as a mentor for a lot of the other instructors.
Mm.
I was a studio manager, and I eventually stepped down because I just wanted to focus a lot more on teaching. I think it's really hard to implement a lot of the business and the teaching. And so I wanted to focus more on that. And so, I have all the students, I have, all the instructors are looking up to me, literally asking me for their feedback. And there just becomes a point where you outgrow, wherever you are. And I just felt like it had been 2.5 years. I had literally done everything that I could have done. I led teacher trainings. I led like 3 or something. I led extensions. That's like a program after teacher training. I, again, served as this mentor. I've done the special classes. I've done everything that I could have done at this one company. And so you have to also trust in yourself to know when it's time to move on. And
Mm.
I know that's not easy. Like, I'm certainly not saying that I think that's easy, But there is going to eventually be that point where it's like, okay, I've done everything here. I can do more by stepping out on that leap of faith and doing more. So
Right? Because it becomes harder when you stay.
oh, yes. Because you get stuck. Like I can do a yoga sequence. Like I can teach. I love to theme. That's like by far one of my favorite things to do. And then, I wanted to do my hip hop music. I started to really transition to that. I would like start off very safe. Like Farside is one of my favorite groups to put in yoga. And so I would do like, one song, and then I would go up to two, and then really like everybody, I'm so serious. Like I would like do it gradually week by week, and people would tell me that like that was their favorite part, or they would literally start singing in classes. So I knew I sort of had a very unique way of teaching. I saw that people were really appreciating sort of my like the changes that I was bringing to it, like the freshness with the music
The
and
culture.
yeah, exactly. And I think after a while, like feeling like I had done everything, I think after a while, I just started to feel a little underappreciated. And that's not anybody's fault, truly at all. It's just that as you start to feel like you've sort of reached this cap, there's only so much appreciation they can show you in a way. Like,
You know what?
as a teacher, they're only going to give me so much praise.
Wait a second. You're going to have to say that again for the people in the back, because that is a word. That is a major
Yeah.
gem. Please, if you can remember it, say it again.
Well, I mean, it's basically like as you've outgrown a situation, you're going to eventually feel unappreciated because they can no longer give you all of this praise. You've already done everything. You have accomplished everything you are supposed to accomplish. So truly, how can they give you more? They can't, which is why it's time for you to move on. And that's just what I felt. I just felt like they, there wasn't much else they could give me for me to feel like I'm doing a great job, which is okay. It's truly not, it's not their fault for that. That just meant that it was time for me to go do something greater. And then in doing that something greater, I will start to feel, even more appreciated. And I feel like we have this culture of like, you shouldn't be selfish, but like you literally have to be selfish, because if you are not allowing yourself to feel almost like God's glory within your life, like why, like that's not okay. Like you should be feeling like you are doing your job well. You should be feeling like you are connecting with the people around you and that they appreciate that connection. They appreciate what you bring.
Yeah.
And so I just started to lose some of that. And I realized it was because it was time to move on. So I say all that to say, I then got to that point of like, okay, it's time to do something else. I thought it was a studio, and I want to say I thought that because I didn't know. I just was like, okay, let me see if somebody can help me find a studio space. And then like literally when I said that, I contacted a friend and she was like, yeah, I got a commercial realtor for you. Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was that easy. He finds space for me. And I'm just like, wait, what? My cousin asked me to send him my business plan to potentially invest. Like what? Like it's something about, again, like it's not that you, like I don't want it to seem like it's easy. You have to do the work. But when you allow the things to happen, like they're just going to happen. And I didn't realize that that was going to be a studio. So we started working on sort of like the plans of what the studio would be last October. And I'll never forget, I went to Spelman. And so I took one of my good friends to the space that I thought it was, the night of homecoming. Like, the big Saturday celebration and everybody's tailgating and all of that.
Yes.
Like, girl, in our tipsiness, I literally was like, come with me to where my studio is going to be. She's like, what? I literally like made her come with me. And then I like walked her through the floor plan. Like we're standing outside looking in the window and I'm like walking her through. And it used to be a market. And so she's like, what are all these like units? And I was like, oh yeah, this is that. So that's kind of like the whole journey of like, okay, I realized that I was ready to move. I didn't know what that was though. So I just kind of like started taking steps towards moving. And then eventually with God was just like, yep, I got you. Let's do this. And we did it.
Right. That is incredible. And you had the heart to say yes. So
Mm-hmm.
many of us say we want things, but our hearts are really guarded and in a position of no.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like, and you keep saying you have to do the work. I hear that twofold, right? You have to do the work, like pay your dues, make sure all your ducks are in, row, your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. But there's your work,
Mm-hmm.
your heart's work, your life's work
Mm-hmm.
that you've had to do. Can you
Yeah.
touch on that a little bit so that can share how you really prepared yourself holistically
Oh, yeah.
for that moment?
Yeah. Um, mm. So last year I went through a depression, and it is true. It was truly the birth of Level 3. What I realized within that depression, and everyone's always like, what? Like depression? Like nobody wants to talk about it. I'm like, it truly saved my life. Like I don't even want to put that lightly. Because within that, what I started to really understand is that I was living in a space of fear. Yes, I felt like I was flowing in what God was giving me, but I also didn't feel like I was taking charge in a lot of the ways that I was supposed to take charge.
Hmm.
And so one thing that area came up, I've always wanted a studio, but I really, I don't know, sort of just talked myself out of it in a lot of ways, as we do, as you're saying, like
Yeah.
we are saying no. And so sort of coming out of that depression, I told myself, I have to face my fears. And I'll never forget, I was telling one of my friends, like, God has never forsaken me. Like, now I'm not going to say that I've always succeeded in everything. It's definitely not that. But like, I've never hit like a rock bottom. I've been down. Like, let's not make it seem like that's not what it is. I've definitely been down, but I've just never, like, I've just always ended up okay. And so I just kept feeling like if I could just tackle this fear, if I could just like do these very small steps to tackling this fear, I'm gonna be okay. Now again, I didn't know that was going to create a whole studio, but like it really is that idea if you just keep saying yes to things. I always tell people I say yes to everything. I literally say yes to everything. Like it's like, because what is no? Like, wait, how can you? I can't turn down any opportunity. Now there'll be certain things that I'm not aligned with, and so I will, change. I'll be like, okay, well, I can't really do this. Like I don't teach for free, but
Well,
else can I
okay.
offer, right? If you don't have a budget, cool. Let me come set up a table or something to pass on information. I'm not giving my energy of teaching, but we can do something else.
I like that.
Yeah, but if you don't at least, keep trying to walk, one foot in front of the other, then you'll never get past that fear. So that was a lot of the internal work that I had to do, realizing what ways fear was stopping me, and really understanding like how can I then live in that power and like really stand in that power that I already have, that I have exactly as I am, not that I have to be anything different.
Well said. That is incredible. We often look to our leaders as pillars of strength,
Mm-hmm.
and it really, dehumanizes them. I'm like, okay, so they have blood and nerve endings and
Yeah.
feelings and
Yeah.
everything else that makes us up, physiologically. Right. But I love how you are able to speak so transparently about that moment in your life and how that shaped, the work that you are doing today.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga is such a intimate healing practice,
Yeah.
right? And so many of us turn to it at some point or another. You hear these crazy myths about yoga, like, oh, downward dog, you're worshiping your dog named Oatmeal. And I'm like, nah,
That's
not
nuts.
really. Um, but what you've done is so unique. Trap
Mm-hmm.
yoga, twerk yoga. Okay, so I have to just give a shout out to one of my friends. She's a journalist. Her name is Megan Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were at Columbia, she actually decided that her master's thesis would be on the history of twerking.
Gosh, yeah.
It was so dope. I was like,
So
Megan,
good.
really?
Yes.
We had this dope feature writing course, and she was like, oh, I'm about to talk about all things radical. And I loved it.
Yeah.
So in February of this year, 3 years after we'd graduated from Columbia, her piece published in Playboy.
Oh
And
my
it is, yes, it's so dope. I am
God.
about to plug it right now, and I hope
Yeah.
that you check it out. It is called An Abridged History of Twerk Culture. So she goes over the origins, of twerking that trace all the way back to Africa, of course, and how sacred, the practice of twerking, we don't know the original name for it, right? But of that dance style was. And it is said, I'm quoting her article, that parts of the dance can be traced back to the time of hunters and gatherers, a way of living before the concept of owning property and the creation of Abrahamic religions. The ritual dance was a way for women's cycles to sync, and it also honored the natural cycle of a woman's fertility and blood flow. Right. And then she has this great quote in here. As we think about twerking, right, it's like we always think it's something so provocative and just like you can't touch it or so ratchet or whatever. I love twerking. I say free the cheeks, right? But in her piece, she talks about Black femme bodies twerking, especially on video, have been perverted into a solely sexual lens, which opposes its historic purpose, a way for feminine energy to bond and celebrate. This is her piece. But when I think about the work that you're doing, I think of liberation. I think of, just freedom and fun and energy. Tell me more about why you decided to incorporate twerking and trap, especially into your practice.
I think it all goes back to me feeling like I was the only one in the yoga room, in that yoga studio. I mean, I'm sure there were other students, but really feeling like, I was the only person of color, and not having that representation. For me, I can feel it in a lot of aspects of yoga. I think the easiest one would be to say music, just because, that's probably sort of the easiest one, as far as, when you go to some other types of yoga classes, you'll hear things like gongs and I love gongs. I'm a sound healer, but you'll hear the chimes, and some of that just doesn't necessarily connect with me and the type of music that I like. So I felt like on a very basic level, it made sense to me to incorporate the music that I just listened to. But I also think that it shows up in different ways, that lack of representation. It also shows up in sort of what are teachers teaching us? Is it a warrior one and they're telling me to have my heels in the same line, yet my hips are wider than yours and my hips are unable to open in that way. So shouldn't you be telling me to do something a little bit different? So I think it all shows up as we aren't necessarily represented when it comes to yoga. And it just made a lot of sense for me to start at the most basic level in some way, by changing the music, because I always tell people too, like, it's not the music that's the yoga. It's not the poses that's the yoga. It's the attitude within the poses, right? Like, so if it's much more about me allowing myself to be free, allowing myself to breathe and feel this safe space, why not create that entire environment? So it just made a lot of sense for me, especially sort of following a lot of the rise of trap yoga, to incorporate that Southern hip hop. And it doesn't have to just be Southern, but that sort of like hard bass. It just made a lot of sense to feel connected to that. And I think it's, if I'm thinking about twerk yoga, that started off as, like, no exaggeration, me moving in a pose. I was like, wait a minute. Like, this makes a lot of sense. Okay. And so from there, I just, I sort of wanted to explore that and these ways that we can dance and let go. I theme a lot of my twerk yoga classes around freedom. Just because I think that as we start to open up our hips, it is very much a hip opening class. As we start to do that, we allow ourselves to be open in other areas of our lives, right? None of yoga stops at the physical. Everything in yoga, the physical is, the physical manifestation is something else greater that's happening in your life. So I just always try to sort of help people understand how that freedom allows us to live authentically in our lives. So yeah, twerk yoga, I mean, teaching it has been incredible. I always get people like, what? Are we actually doing yoga? Yes, we are actually doing yoga. We're just also, adding some little booty pops and horse or,
There is nothing wrong with throwing it in a circle, okay? I
you
tell
know what?
everybody, I'm just about to go throw it in a circle.
Yes.
You having a bad day, throw it in a circle.
Hello. We should
Why
make
not?
it.
There's something so liberating about being comfortable in your body.
Mhm.
So many of us have been body shamed. So
Yeah.
many of us have been told, don't be fast. Don't be
Mhm.
out there showing too much of this. Don't be out here. It's just like
Yeah.
all these things that we are told, especially
Yeah.
as Black women.
Yes.
Black girls, Black women are hypersexualized from the time their shoes are no longer lighting up
Mm.
until the time we die, until it's popular culture and trending. You feel me? Like,
Yeah.
let me throw it in a circle.
Yeah.
I'm out here in these streets.
Yeah.
Let someone else who uses, the terminology boxer braids
Mm.
learn how to throw it in a circle or try to throw it in a circle. And then all of a sudden, throwing it in a circle
Mm.
is appropriate. We'll be doing it in the workplace when someone is stressing us out. It's like, wait, what?
Yes.
Um, but what you're doing has this cultural relevancy,
Yes. Yeah.
and it is so freeing. You're also building community, and I think that's
Yeah.
important to touch on in our conversation as well, because there is this belief that yoga is not for Black people.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
yoga is just not something that we do. And I actually um, have done yoga. And one of the ways that I really became more immersed in it was through a program that was offered at my church. And I was like, what?
I love
Came
that.
in, it was some cool jazz playing, and we transitioned to a little
Yes.
R&B. And I was like, okay.
That's amazing.
And, it was just all of us. It was Black women,
Yeah.
all body types, all
Mm-hmm.
shapes, and
Mm-hmm.
just backgrounds, right? Some people had done
Mm-hmm.
yoga before. Of course, the instructor was well versed and was an
Mm-hmm.
expert. And there were those who just had never done it before. And the way we were able to bond was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Every Saturday morning, we looked forward to that class. And when it was over, it was just like, dang, how do we stay connected? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
why has it been so important for you to be able to create
Mm-hmm.
community,
Yeah.
for people of color, especially in East Atlanta?
Mm-hmm. Man, I mean, it's been so important because I always think that like community starts with us. I was like, as you were talking, sort of about like, Black women being hypersexualized, I was really thinking about this idea that goes, I mean, truly all the way back to slavery of how we had no rights over our body. And
Mm,
because we were only looked at as childbearers, like we were only, used by white masters in that way, we just were never able to fully connect with our bodies.
mm,
And I've been leaning a lot more into that idea of how can I own my body? How can I understand that like sexuality and twerking and all of these things that I'm doing my body are not for the male, well, or female or whatever gender gaze. Like
right.
it's for me. It's for me to own. It's for me to discover, to fall in love with. I don't know. My mind was just kind of going there because I also feel like that has so much to do with what twerk yoga is. It's
Let's go there then, sis. Let's go there. I am 30 years young, and I am telling everybody I probably should stop. And I'm like starting to understand more why, women are a little bit more apprehensive about sharing their age. They don't want to be discriminated against. Some
Mm-hmm.
people just think they look older than what they are. Some people
Yeah.
do, but to each his own, right? I am celebrating this new decade in my life.
Yes.
And one of the things that I am unapologetic about
Mm-hmm.
is loving myself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We are told to be prim and proper for the
Hello.
next person,
Mm-hmm.
but self love is something that comes later on with self care and finding yourself, and then your spirituality. Like we make it. Society makes it seem like that's something you're supposed to get in your 40s after life has happened to
What
you.
is
You've
up
had your
with
heart broken.
that? True. Yeah.
Girl, I don't know, but I'm not trying to get it next decade. I want it now. Okay. Like that corny commercial. It's my money and I want it now. Like I literally want it now. And I think that there's something so beautiful about the way we're able to connect with ourselves when we are in a meditative state, when we are exploring different ways to be flexible, and we
Yes.
have to be present. And you know what? Okay, look. You have to be present in order to be flexible. I just
Yes.
feel like that is a life lesson, right? And as it relates to yoga, it's something that really reigns true. I remember trying to move into different positions and being told to quiet my mind. And I was
Yes.
just
Yeah.
like, okay. We have our attention on so many things, and
Mm.
focus and balance are so important. Can you elaborate? Because I could keep talking forever, but this is the podcast, a two-way conversation. And I really want you to weigh in on that as it relates to sensuality and self.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm passing the collection plate back to you. Like, let's just go on and give you this offering for that little word. Oh gosh, it's so true. I mean, it's so true. And when it comes to like sensuality, I think what we aren't taught is that the body doesn't have to always just be sexual.
Mm,
It can be that tool for more connection. And that doesn't have to always be for other people, right? So in our bodies, our root chakra is literally like the grounding position. It's like, okay, basic needs. Do I have everything that I need? And then as we go up the spine, we're coming to the sacral chakra, which a lot of people, love to talk about because it's where our creativity, it's where our sexuality lives in our physical body. It's right below the belly button. And I think that as we start to understand how can we open up these physical areas in our body, right? That's the hips. A lot of times that's the shoulders and the heart for a lot of people, especially because we're all at computers, we're hunching, we're texting,
mm,
we're doing all of that. So as we can start to physically open up our body, we can't help but allow that sensual energy to tap into us because we're flowing. Literally, the energy is flowing through our body and we're allowing ourselves to feel really connected to that. And for me, twerk yoga, just to kind of like share all of this is related. Twerk yoga is that idea that as I allow my hips to open, as I allow my physical body to open, that I can also allow myself to be open in other areas of my life.
mm,
As you're saying, like the flexibility piece, it is a lot of that. It's what am I doing inside of these poses? Am I allowing myself to breathe? Am I being affected by everything outside of me? Because I guarantee like how you're showing up on your mat is exactly how you're showing up off of your mat. Like these
mm.
poses is going to show you how you show up to people. But if you're able to really work on that very fluid, that movement, that energy flow, that's what helps us continue to tap into that energy that's within us.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. How you show up on the mat is how you are showing up off of the
Oh
mat.
gosh. I always tell people
Oh,
like I don't care anything about the poses. I no kidding, I had a guy one time take shavasana, which is like laying down corpse pose, the entire class. I'm not exaggerating. The entire class.
wow.
It was a heated candlelight class. And he did more yoga than we probably did. because he probably
Mm.
was like, you know what? I'm gonna just honor my body. And right now I'm probably super tired. So I'm gonna just lay here. I don't know what he was thinking, but it really is that idea of like the poses don't matter, but rather like, are you allowing yourself to open up in these different ways? How are you breathing within the pose? You know, how, especially if you're like holding onto poses really, really tightly, like you're like clenching up. I promise that's probably what you do like off of the mat. You're probably holding onto something so tightly, you're probably suffocating it. And if you can just allow yourself to like let things move and breathe, you'll start to understand how to do that off of the mat too.
My goodness. You know, you are handing out so many gems right now and so many life lessons. I'm like, I am so full, right? I knew that I was going to get so much, and I knew that, you know, everyone tuned in was going to get so much.
Mhm.
Can you, oh my gosh, let me just have a second to take in everything that you are
Mhm.
saying, Audrey. You are so necessary. The work that you are doing is so necessary. I understand that the bottom line in business is to make money, right? You
Mhm.
want to have positive cash flow. But I love how that is not the focus of our conversation,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like, y'all have to support Level 3 Yoga in
Yes.
Atlanta. You
Yeah.
do, because you've gotten so much here, and it is only right that when you are in Atlanta,
Yeah.
that you support this Black woman
Yeah.
owned business. Okay. So there goes the plug. Go support her. Go check out level3yoga.com. Sign up
Mhm.
for a class. The full schedule is up,
Yes.
and be sure that you sign up and
Yeah.
support. But we're going to get to that, right? But I really want you to give us some advice. Give us some ways that we can become
Mm.
more one with ourselves. How can we stretch the way
Mm.
we think? And how can we really prepare our minds and our bodies
Mhm.
for the practice of yoga?
Mhm. Well, I think everything starts with being quiet. For me, that meant literally not talking when I started yoga. And maybe that means the same thing, you know, for other people, especially if they have a job where they are talking to people all day long. But also know that that can just look like, you know, stillness, sitting down in a quiet room, not being afraid to turn music off, and really allow yourself to sit with yourself, to understand. I mean, I think it goes a little bit deeper than just understanding who you are as a person, but really being honest about what ways, like how are you showing up for people? Um, I think that a lot of the people that are around us can be, you know, such a reflection of
Mm,
the good and the bad in us. So I always think that if you're sort of looking to get into just any sort of spiritual practice, I'm super okay if that's not yoga. It does not at all have to be yoga. It could be the gym. You know, a lot of people like more of an active practice. I'm super fine with that. Maybe, or it could be meditation. You know, maybe you do want to go that traditional sort of stillness practice. But I do think that it starts with getting really still and then evaluating the people around you. What are you allowing in your life?
mm,
And understanding, you know, not just like on top of what are you allowing in your life, but also like what is not serving you. And for me, at the beginning of this journey, that meant a job that was literally not serving me. I dreaded every moment I would go into that office. But that can look like different things for different people. And I think, I don't know, something's telling me to say that because for some reason, we always think that a spiritual practice is also just so personal. It starts off that way, absolutely, but it should eventually develop into how are you like showing up for the people around you? Um, how are you responding to people? Are you maintaining the control within you, or are you just flipping off?
mm,
Um, yeah, I think it's a little bit of those two, but I also think it's just allowing yourself to do something. Like I have a friend that like loves running on the treadmill, and he will never not run on the treadmill. And I just am always like, I'm so glad you were running today. And he's like, what? I'm like, because that's a spiritual practice for him. Anything that you are allowing yourself to do that feeds back into you, that's a spiritual practice. So know also and be okay with that might look like different things for different people. But just allowing yourself to be open to exploring that. Because that self-care, that self-love, the world's not going to give it to you. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And we have to start to understand those ways in which we can be selfish so that we can understand, the power that's within us and really walk into that power. I hope that's not sort of like answering your question. That's like what is immediately coming up for me.
Yeah, it most definitely does. And I have to ask, before we get into your mic drop moment, I want to know, how has the work that you are doing helped you to show up for yourself, right? I can only imagine, like, on your journey, going from LA, exiting the media industry, to returning, to Atlanta, following your heart, leaving those jobs, pushing past people telling you no or not now, becoming, a business owner, having faced and really championed through depression to get where you are now.
Yeah.
Like, how have you been able to do that? And how has all of that helped you show up as you are right now?
Yeah. I think I've been able to do that because I try to hold myself accountable a lot. I'll write down, or I really love to like talk to people. Like I tell my friends all of my goals. Again, I told my friend I want to be on this TV show. I have that sort of, that really amazing circle of friends. Two of them are business owners. So, I've always felt that I can lean on other people. And so, I really do hold myself accountable for what it is I say I'm going to do. And then I have people who also hold me accountable. And I think that's a lot of it. I think a lot of it is also, not, or sort of one of the biggest things I learned from yoga is like not relying on my emotions. It took me a long time to understand like emotions, like there's just there's no place for emotions really when it comes to the work. People don't care if I don't know, just got into some big argument with someone. They expect me to walk into the studio and teach them an amazing class. Like, not that they don't see me as a human. I think they definitely see that, but they also feel that they are paying for a service and they deserve for me to leave, all of the personal stuff and really show up. So I've been challenging myself to do the work even when I don't feel like it. I've also really been challenging myself to like set aside those emotions and almost like come back to them in a way. Like if, I'll definitely feel, let's say I've gotten a rejection or something. I'll sort of like tune that out for like a few hours and I'll allow myself to come back to it and then just like feel all the feelings and like eat all the ice cream, like whatever that looks like. But I think that's sort of, a lot of how I've had to really get centered. Definitely holding myself accountable, but also really understanding just that piece about emotions, because your emotions are going to change just every day.
Right.
and it's very easy. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I learned this from depression. It's very easy just to get stuck on how you feel. And you're very valid in how you're feeling. You feel like crap today. That is a very valid emotion. But also, the business won't grow if you only allow yourself to feel like crap today. So maybe we only, allow ourselves to feel like crap for an hour. And then after that, we decide to open up our email and answer some emails. Like, I don't know, it can be anything very, very small. But I think it's very important just to understand that and to have like control within yourself and just really keep that idea of like, I can only control myself. I can pray about everything else. I can write down exactly what it is that I want. I can do all of that. I can visualize. I can do all of that. But ultimately, I can only control what I'm doing. So why not, do the very best that I can?
That is so real. My goodness. You know, I just am like smiling ear to ear, right?
Yeah.
Because, the one thing that comes to mind is we never get to fully know those who are leading, right? Those who are closest to them have the privilege and the honor of like really fully knowing them and loving on them. I cannot wait for those who come and practice and learn from you, and lead beside you, to hear you speak about what it is that you have been called to do and what you love the way that you are right now. Because I think that their level of appreciation and just their commitment and investment is going to just increase tenfold. Like, I speak that blessing over you because you are who you say you are, and you are really doing the work. And how wonderful is it to know that, someone who is leading by example and by life experience, and not just showing up because they took a 40, 100 hour training and now have a certification and are just getting paid to do this. And this is something they do, while they're just like going through life. I just think that's incredible. You are extremely dope, and I am so excited about the growth that
Mm.
is. I am confident that there's going to be so much growth with Level 3 Yoga, because of who you are in the way that you are on assignment, and my goodness, I am blown away by you yet again.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. And every stop on the tour, we have to have a mic drop moment.
Mm-hmm.
And as the guest who is taking center stage, it is appropriate for you to drop the mic.
I'll say first two things that kind of come to mind. I've talked about my depression. I've been very open about it, just because I do feel like it was so eye-opening, into the ways that I was living in fear. And it's so easy to see people's lives from the outside looking in, right? But you're teaching, you got moved up to manager. Like, yeah, but I also could have stepped out and really walked in faith even more than I was doing, to be honest, and really approach certain things. And sort of in that time of depression, two people, quote unquote, saved me. They didn't save me, but I like to say that just as like, sort of a part of what it was. And that is Oprah Winfrey, and yes, Auntie Oprah, and,
Yes.
and Dr. Brene Brown.
Oh my gosh,
I,
both my aunties.
girl, I am so, I try not to use the word obsessed just because I think that there's a thing with that. I am so obsessed with Dr. Brene Brown. And when you said mic drop, mentioning their work felt like the mic drop. Oprah Winfrey on her Super Soul Sunday podcast talks a lot about gratitude. And this, one of the things coming out of depression last year, I felt like I was really, really coming out of it, like August, September-ish. And so then we sort of found the studio in October. And then I had been listening to her podcast, and she talks a lot about having a gratitude practice.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, that's like, what do you mean? I'm always grateful for things. I say I'm grateful for things, but do you really examine like what it is that you can be grateful for? And so every single day since January 1st of this year, I have said one thing that I'm grateful for every single morning. And what it's helped me to understand is that, is that gratitude and being grateful for life has nothing to do with anything outside of my body. It's everything to do with me and what God has blessed me with. And I just feel like that perspective has changed my life because I've allowed myself to understand just the very small things that I can be and how I can be rooted in gratitude. And then when it comes to, so I would love to just, encourage people in some way to get some type of gratitude practice. Does not have to be every day, but really allow yourself to understand, what it is that you can be grateful in that moment for. Because I guarantee that if you continue to say what it is you can be grateful in that moment, because trust me, it's going to change moment to moment. If you can really, root yourself in what you can be grateful for in that moment, all this other stuff is going to not matter as much. It's still, life's still going to be hard. We're not ever going to act like it's not, but you can just understand the ebbs and flow of life, and that you never going to always have bad times. It's going to eventually come back up. It just literally has to. So then just sort of bringing up Dr. Brené Brown, she talks a lot about vulnerability and how courage is one of the bravest things that someone can do. And she is the reason why I'm so open with talking about my depression, talking about mental health. I really do believe that there's a stigma in hip hop around mental health. And so that's also a lot of the work that we're doing with Level 3, just helping people to understand how this culture has this stigma and the ways in which we can be a little bit more open. And then as we just continue to allow ourselves to be very vulnerable, very courageous with telling and sharing our story. But she also says not everyone deserves to hear your story. But as we understand those people who deserve to hear our story, we'll just peel back the layers very slowly. We'll continue to understand that we all just out here trying to make it. And we're all just out here trying to grow trying to grow and be better people. So my mic drop has something to do with me, doesn't really have anything to do with me, but definitely want to share a lot of gratitude for the two people who have truly helped me in a time when I needed them the most. So yeah.
Beautiful. My goodness. I share very similar sentiments about those two women. They are most
Dr. Brown's
definitely.
books, man, I just
Okay.
I love how she writes in a very casual, but I'm gonna change your life kind of way.
Right. Okay.
It's just so easy to read, and her points are just so good.
Yes. The gifts of imperfections have
Yes,
most definitely helped me on my Get My Life tour. Okay.
yes, that's amazing. I'm actually reading
No.
Braving the Wilderness again right now.
Wow.
And if we're talking about books, because I can literally talk about books all day, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck has woo.
I need to pick that up
Oh,
ASAP. I most definitely have seen it, and I most
yeah.
definitely need to add that to my my reading list.
Yeah, it's a lot of do less, a lot of that, and be very intentional about why you're doing less. But yeah, and then we're just we're trying to, I'm trying to do a lot more of growing the studio outside of the studio. I don't want us to feel like we're confined to four walls. I'm actually doing an intention tour that's coming up. I'm going to be in a few different cities because, of course,
I
I lived
love that.
going back there. I'll be in Maryland and DC, Philly, and Dallas, and Atlanta. So just trying to do some touring, trying to get people, get this idea of, twerking, this idea of you can do yoga and hear your favorite songs, and I'm gonna get you super zen at the end. It's gonna get you all the whole spectrum. We're gonna have fun, and then we're gonna calm it all the way down. So
I love it.
yeah.
Tell people how they can stay connected with you and
Yeah.
learn more about this Intentions Tour, Level 3
Yeah.
Yoga,
Yeah.
and Audrey Cash.
Yes. So I'll say the studio first. So yes, we are Level 3 Yoga. We are on Instagram and Facebook. The handle is Level 3, Level, the number 3, Yoga, Yoga. And then for my personal is the THE Soulful. So Soulful Yogi, Yogi, the Soulful Yogi. And yeah, I mean, I'll be releasing the Intention Tour dates right after Thanksgiving. So that's really, really exciting.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Audrey, you are incredible. I most definitely am rooting for you.
Oh,
And when I am in Atlanta, I will most definitely be thrown in circles with you.
yes. Oh my God. Lydia, you literally have to.
I like
Have to.
most definitely have
Yes.
no reason why I should not. Um,
I love
and
that.
you have been incredible. I am so glad that you were able to join us on this stop of the
Yeah.
tour, holding it down in Atlanta. You are such a real one. And I am so glad that you decided to tune in on this stop, meet Audrey.
Yeah.
And you know what? I hope that you get your life and that you get to throw it in a circle with Audrey and that you become one with yourself
Mhm.
as you continue your tour. I will see you on the next stop of the Get My Life tour. It has been real. Peace.